Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who tries to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we are going to talk about a multi-level marketing company, and we're not going to mention any names, but we're going to lay out exactly how these folks work. So let's talk about this down at the beach. Well, years ago, when I was just a pup, I was in the Army and I had gone down to visit my aunt who lived about 60 miles away from where I was stationed. And she invited me to come with her to a meeting where I could learn how to save money on my taxes. And being in the Army, not making a lot of money, and certainly not wanting to give a lot of it back to Uncle Sam, I said, well, sure, I'll come along. So what happened was we went to this meeting and we were told how just by helping our friends buy things they already needed, like soap and dish soap and detergent and um, vitamins, things that they would need and would find very useful and at much better prices, that we could just make scads of money and we wouldn't have to pay hardly any taxes on it. And as we came out of that meeting, I looked at my Aunt Naomi and I said, my understanding is that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. She said, well, maybe so, but I'm going to try it out. What do I have to lose? I said, well, they wanted $45 to join you up as a member. So, you got that to lose. And $45 at that time, to me, was a fairly substantial sum. And I wasn't going to part with it. But again, to make a long story short, she did, and that lasted about 6 months until she became quite tired of people calling and asking her why she hadn't sold more soap. Now, she bought the soap and she used the soap and she liked the soap, but there's only so much soap you can buy. And if you're not washing clothes for a football team, you don't need, you know, bucket loads of soap. So there wasn't a whole lot of way for her to make a ton of money. And she wasn't selling any soap to any football teams either. So she didn't make a whole lot of money at that and later said, you were right, it was a scam. Well, I didn't think very much about that after that event. It kind of became one of those things that was way back there in my memory until I went to work in 1981 at a hospital in West Palm Beach, Florida called St. Mary's Hospital. And St. Mary's Hospital at the time was run by the Sisters of St. Mary. It's a charitable organization, a healthcare organization. They were very good. It was a very good hospital. They had a neonatal intensive care unit, an intensive care unit, a cardiac care unit, a very busy ER. It was just down the street from Riviera Beach, which was what we wound up calling it the Riviera Beach Rod and Gun Club because every Saturday night somebody was either beaten or shot. But it was a great place to work, and I worked with some really great people. And as a new hire there, I was fabulously lucky to get put on the 3 to 11 shift. And I say lucky because usually when you start out in healthcare and you're a new hire, you wind up on the graveyard shift and you're working 11 to 7. That isn't what happened to me. So I was very fortunate, and I was on a shift with a supervisor by the name of Grace. And Grace was, unbeknownst to me, absolutely tied in with a particular multi-level marketing company that was very much oriented to encouraging people to join, and then you can make money through their system. But I didn't realize that was the situation. And I was assigned initially to Second North, which is where a lot of the people that at the time I regarded as elderly and now realize they're just a few years older than me now. But they were very sick people, and a lot of them were from New York. They had moved down to enjoy the beaches in their golden years, and their kids and family up in New York never got down to see them when they were in the hospital. So when you would go in to do a treatment with them, you'd strike up a conversation and they would look forward to you coming in. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed talking with them. And the workload wasn't too significant. So I had a good time doing it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was work in critical care, particularly in the emergency room and in the intensive care unit, because that's where my interest lay. I was told I was an adrenaline junkie because I loved running to codes. I liked saving lives. It's call it a character flaw. But at any rate, I got signed to Second North, and the proverbial way that was described at the hospital was the dead zone. And so I asked Grace, I said, when can I look forward maybe to going to work in the ICU? Well, she said, I don't know. Would you be interested in coming to a party at my house? And I'm like, well, I'm not really sure I want to do that. I'm with somebody, and they said, oh no, not like that. It's just a party. It's really it's kind of an informational presentation. Really, it's about how to save money on your taxes. And I said, well, I'd certainly be interested in learning how to save money on my taxes. I was making more money at that time than I had made ever in my life, and worked a lot of overtime, so I had some really good paychecks, and I knew I was going to get dinged at tax time. So it was good to find out if there was a way to save taxes on taxes. So I did. I said, yeah, I'll come to your party. And then later on, I told somebody about that, one of the 3 to 11 crew who had been there for a long time, and they went, oh no, you shouldn't have done that. I'm like, why not? And they explained that she was hooked in with this multi-level marketing scheme, and that the two supervisors on night shift were also hooked into the same multi-level marketing scheme, and that if I went to this and joined up with them, I would become another of what they called the MLM zombies. They used a different term, but basically people who lived for the opportunity to sell stuff to other staff and sometimes to patients, which is where this story really gets off track. So later on, the supervisor came back to me and said, hey, we're having another one of those get-togethers on Saturday at my house. And I said, well, I'm not coming. Well, why not? I said, I'm not interested in doing what you're doing. And I explained that, multi-level marketing never benefits the person at the bottom of the ladder. It always benefits those at the top. I said, I'm not really interested in doing that. She said, but you could get other people and you could make tons of money. And I said, I'm just not interested in doing that. It's not my thing. I want to work in healthcare. I chose healthcare. That's what I want to do. So I'd gone into the I had been working in the intensive care unit after I said I'd come to the party. And then after I told him I wouldn't come to the party, I was back in the dead zone. I was being punished for my recalcitrance. And as a result of that, I went to see the manager and complained, and nothing at all happened. And I guess nothing at all happened until the administration became aware that they had 3 respiratory therapists who were selling soap not only to staff, but to patients. And they wound up firing the department director, hiring a new guy who came in and said, you bring this stuff up in the hospital even one more time, I hear about you doing it even once, any one of you, I'm going to fire all 3 of you. And so, because they had been so enmeshed in this cult-like atmosphere of this multi-level marketing scheme, none of them could walk away and just do their jobs at the hospital. They had to make it about their little multi-level marketing thing. And about 3 weeks after he took over, he wound up having to fire all 3 of them, which I viewed as being a really good thing, and it made the place a lot more fun to work. But recently, somebody in a comment here said that it's really a shame that the same kind of people who are interested in the sovereign citizen mentality are also subject to being hooked in with these kinds of multi-level marketing schemes. And they buy into the philosophy behind it, and as a result of buying into that philosophy, they sort of lose the ability to think critically about what they're doing. And for that reason, they wind up usually they wind up losing a lot of money. And there are a lot of issues with this. But before I go much further, let's take a moment and let's examine exactly how a multi-level marketing scheme works. Okay, so this is how the whole scheme works. You have a company that essentially sells different products, whether it's nutraceuticals, which are supposedly these devices or these things that allow you to improve your health, grow your hair better, make your nails better, improve your mental focus, all those kinds of things, none of which have been approved by the FDA. And soap powders and dishwasher soap and all kinds of stuff like that. Then they hire distributors. Now, there's not a lot of these distributors, and these distributors don't do actual individual sales. Their task is to manage a large block of independent business owners and to provide motivational materials, support, and all that other kind of stuff for these independent business owners. Now, the independent business owners are originally looped into this by a promise of uh, basically doing well by giving your neighbors things that they already need or selling them. And I suspect that gets a large number of these people in at the bottom level. And then if they get to be really good at attracting other people, they go up and up and up until finally they become, if not a distributor, at least one of these larger independent business owners. But the way to really appreciate this is to understand it from the bottom of the pyramid. So you have somebody here who is basically a third level independent business owner. They buy products and they probably sell some. They keep some profit on their sales, but they don't make any downline sales unless they have independent business owners working for them. The second level independent business owner is who really starts making a little bit of extra money from other people's work. They buy the products and they sell them to their downline distributors, and then they keep the profit on those sales, and they get a commission on all of the downline sales. It's a pretty sweet deal for them because they have to work less and they still make money from everybody else working for them. Now, the top level independent business owners, they buy the products and they sell them to the downline distributors, the second level and third level IBOs, and they get commissions on their downline sales. And again, they're not working particularly hard here. They are just selling things to their independent business owners and taking a profit off of that. The people really raking in the dough, however, are the distributors. They're making money hand over fist. And of course, the MLM company is raking in money in the billions of dollars. You may have heard that people refer to these kinds of multi-level marketing schemes as Ponzi schemes. Well, the Federal Trade Commission did an investigation into one particular company's MLM scheme, and they determined that it was not a Ponzi scheme for a number of reasons. But the interesting thing about that is I'm not sure they got the full skinny on how the system worked at the most cellular level. But I want to go through a little bit of history here. In the 1920s, there was a guy named Charles Ponzi, who was an immigrant from Italy, who wanted to make his fortune in the United States, and he figured out that international reply coupons, which are a form of international postage, could be used to generate large amounts of money for him. And he invented what is called the Ponzi scheme. Let's look at that now. Now, some of you may have heard of a guy by the name of Bernie Madoff, and this is essentially what he did. In a Ponzi scheme, you have a top-level scammer, the guy who is going to make all the money and, in Madoff's case, spend it and waste it and wind up hurting a lot of people. But essentially what they do is they go out and they recruit a small number of investors. And that small number of investors buy into whatever the product or service or scheme is that the scammer is selling. He's never selling the Ponzi scheme. What he is selling is some kind of product or service that is absolutely certain to make tons of money for these investors. So he recruits these investors. And then those investors are then encouraged to go out and recruit other investors. And then, of course, those other new investors then contribute money back to the top-level scammer. The top level scammer then pays back the initial investors on a 3-to-1 basis. If they invested $1,000, here's 3,000 back. And of course, they're excited because they're making lots of money. They think this is a great deal. Wow, look how my investment has grown. So what do? They immediately reinvest their proceeds. And of course, the top level scammer takes full advantage of that. And then they go out and they tell other investors, look, we're making tons of money in this and you can too. You got to buy into this company. Get in while the getting's good. And that's essentially how that works. But because the top level scammer is paying people off with the money that the new investors are coming in, he's basically robbing Peter to pay Paul, and then a little bit later on he's going to rob Paul too. Needless to say, in the meantime, the top level scammer decides that it's a good time to book a quick trip to a country that doesn't have an extradition treaty. And then they take all that money with them. And that is the very definition of a pyramid scheme, because it's the people at the bottom of the pyramid, in other words, all of those new investors, who lose money, and the only people who have a chance of getting any of their money back are the people in the middle of the pyramid or close to the top. And even they are very unlikely to get everything that they've invested back. So do you see how very much like a Ponzi scheme this multi-level marketing thing is? The people at the top are always going to do fine, and the people at the bottom are going to buy soap, and they are not going to do fine. The promises and the representations that are held out to them are almost always unlikely to actually carry the day. Now, one of the things that a certain multi-level marketing company has done is they have started using in their contract, where they contract with their independent business owners, in their contract they are putting in an arbitration clause. Now, if you go buy a cell phone or cell phone service from AT&T or Verizon or pretty much any of the cell phone providers, you're going to find an arbitration provision in that contract. If you go buy a car from any reputable car dealer, you're probably going to find an arbitration clause in the contract. And the reason they do that is because it's cheaper for them, and also because it discourages attorneys from taking cases, because the return on investment for the attorney is much lower in an arbitration setting. But for whatever reason, they put these into the contracts, and in that particular company's contract, the requirements for an arbitrator, in other words, to be appointed as an arbitrator, you have to attend training from the company. In other words, before you can judge our company, you have to be inculcated into our cult so that you understand what we're doing, and so that you realize that we're not doing anything wrong. Essentially, that's what it is. It is essentially doing what is never allowed in a courtroom. You would never have a situation where it would be lawful for the defense attorney to say, okay, judge, let's talk back in your chambers without that pesky plaintiff's attorney, and let me tell you what's going on and why these guys are full of gas. That couldn't happen because the judge is a neutral. He doesn't get to pick sides. He gets to determine what the facts and the law are in a contract case, but he doesn't get to be, essentially turned one way or the other by the parties. That's how the American justice system works. But in their arbitration agreement, if you agree to that arbitration agreement, those are the rules that are going to apply. And I would imagine that there have been very, very, very few people who have prevailed in an arbitration under those circumstances. And of course, that's exactly what you would expect. Now, it's not unusual for a company to set things up in such a way as to favor them tremendously. But what is not lawful is to do something that is, to use a word that is frequently used in the law, unconscionable, meaning that it violates the very principles of conscience and fairness to set things up in such a way that there is absolutely no way for someone to get justice. And that is essentially what a contract that essentially allows the arbitrator to be given a preferential view of how the company operates before ever being asked to determine any facts in a matter. That is something that you just can't sign, and not in good faith. And if you do sign it, that's what your options are going to be. So at any rate, I share all this with you because multi-level marketing schemes do not work for the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, if you're a go-getter and you are somebody who's going to recruit 40 or 50 people, and if you can recruit 40 or 50 people and get them working for you and get them to recruit 40 or 50 people working for them, you can make money in a situation like that. The only problem you're going to have is sleeping at night, because what you're doing is essentially legalized theft. That's my opinion. You may not share that opinion, but it is legalized theft. Well, guys, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully you've learned a little something about multi-level marketing companies and how they operate, and why you should, in every instance, avoid them. Because there have been very, very few people who have ever made real money in this except at the top of the pyramid. If you have the opportunity today, go out of your way to do something nice for someone, even if they happen to be trying to sell you a multi-level marketing scheme. And remember that on this channel, we always try to do the right thing and the nice thing for everybody else. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching. Come join me down here at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.